Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alex Blanchard, Manager Corporate Communications for Lexario Bioscience. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for our first Corporate Update web conference. Lexario's CEO, Chris Bunka, and our President, John Doherty, will be updating you on what we've been working on. We'll discuss the importance of our recent patent news. Ed Ergenzinger is also online to answer any patent questions you may have. Our presentation will be followed by a Q&A session. If you have any questions, please use the chat feature on your screen to ask them at any time during the presentation. We'll get to them at the end. So without any further delay, Chris Bunka will start the presentation. On to you, Chris.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. We have a big crowd here, and so we're very flattered that so many people were able to join us today. I will give a somewhat formal presentation for the first 15 or 20 minutes, along with John Doherty, our president, and then we will follow that up with a Q&A session. And as Alex mentioned, we'll get to as many of those questions as we have time for. Before we begin, I have to say that this presentation contains certain forward-looking statements and that all viewers are encouraged to read our public filings available on SEDAR and EDGAR for more complete information, including summaries of all risks and uncertainties. So I would imagine that you all know who we are. Lexaria is an innovator, and we have a disruptive drug delivery technology. Our patented Dehydratech technology changes the way active pharmaceutical ingredients, or APIs, enter the body orally. It works with most anything you swallow: pills, capsules, beverages, and foods. Dehydratech does 4 key things. It eliminates the unwanted API taste without the need for sugars, sweeteners, or chemicals. It significantly reduces the time of onset, allowing edibles to be effective typically in only 15 or 20 minutes, rather than the 60 to 120 minutes often associated with ingestible product effects today. It allows APIs to bypass first-pass liver metabolism, fast onset, and mitigation of side effects. And it significantly increases total bioabsorption or bioavailability by as much as 5 to 10x. Our technology is patent allowed for a wide range of APIs, which we'll describe more in a moment. And we were very pleased to announce yesterday that the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office has granted patent allowance to us for the entire suite of drug molecules listed here. We'll explain today why this might be the single most significant development in Lexaria's history. And our business model is primarily focused on out-licensing the Dehydratech technology on a royalty basis to other leading brand manufacturers to make their products better. Although we do make and sell our own line of CBD products, product development also helps us with potential licensees, and our own consumer products are certainly not our main focus. Here are some of the details on our growing patent portfolio. We filed a total of 19 patent applications in the US and internationally, including national filings in over 44 separate countries. 2 patents have already been issued by the US Patent Office and by the Australian authorities. And we just announced that another groundbreaking patent was allowed by the USPTO. We expect this patent to be issued in the next 12 weeks. I cannot stress enough the importance of this new patent. It begins to open 3 new markets to us: vitamins, pain relief, and nicotine, each of which is a far larger market than the cannabis sector. And I also cannot stress enough the broadness of this. Other companies are pursuing IP strategies that narrowly identify a particular medical condition, for example, that might be treated using their product. Our patent portfolio is completely different. We've developed a drug delivery platform that can deliver many different APIs in the treatment of perhaps dozens of medical conditions if adopted by business partners. It's my opinion that this is the single most important patent award in the cannabis industry, and it's of great impact in our other market sectors well. It really provides Lexaria a strong foundation for years. Our patent portfolio drives our business. This new patent allowance is 1 to 2 years ahead of my own personal expectations and will allow us to radically accelerate our business plans during 2018. Here you can see how our Dehydratech technology transforms entry for APIs into the human body. We believe our technology is one of a kind in its ability to overcome what we refer to as the 4 bioavailability barriers for edibles today. Nanotech, for example, cannot solve all 4 of these problems. The 4 barriers are taste, where people obviously won't absorb the beneficial API ingredients if the taste of the underlying products are poor to begin with. Stomach degradation, where the acidic human stomach environment breaks down substances we ingest, decreasing the viable proportion of surviving APIs. Intestinal absorption, where only a fraction of what we do ingest is able to cross the human epiintestinal wall, especially in the case of fat-soluble compounds like those covered by our issued and allowed patents. And by the way, it's intestinal absorption where most nanotechnologies are concentrated, obviously solving only one of the 4 problems. And liver metabolism is the 4th barrier, where the human liver further metabolizes, alters, and eliminates a large proportion of any amount of API that successfully gets this far, leaving only a tiny fraction available for absorption into the circulatory system. Our repeated study results across all of these barriers are extremely compelling, resulting in much higher bioavailability and faster onset of action than traditional products can achieve. Now, I'd like to ask John Doherty, our president, to show you how Dehydratech works and walk you through the next several slides. John?
Thank you, Chris. On the left side of this slide, you can see our patented process, and on the right, you can see the effects that it enables. In this example, we are looking at THC, which is really the key ingredient in marijuana edibles today that consumers seek for its powerful psychogenic effects, including euphoria and pain relief, for instance. So basically, what Dehydratech does is combine an API of interest, like THC-rich marijuana oil, shown here, with a high oleic acid source, like sunflower oil, using a specialized dehydration synthesis reaction. As a result of this, the user cannot detect unwanted cannabis flavors, while the combined molecules essentially lever existing human physiology for faster and more complete absorption via what's known as the lymphatic circulatory route. And that's shown in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide. So think of Dehydratech as a Trojan horse technology per se that combines THC in a patented delivery system for masked entry into the body swiftly and more completely and without unwanted tastes. So what are the commercial applications of our technology? These are the 4 classes of compounds that we have received patent allowance for. For cannabinoids like THC and CBD, for instance, we can enable superior ingestible products of virtually all forms, from beverages to foods to capsules to tablets. But our technology is now patent allowed for things like fat-soluble vitamins. Those are vitamins A, D, K, and E, and non-steroidals, like, for instance, ibuprofen. And finally, our technology is now patent allowed for nicotine applications. Imagine for a moment the world's first cup of coffee, including nicotine, whether as a smoking cessation aid or otherwise, powered by Dehydratech. And Lexaria is actively working on research and development to develop exactly this type of product, where we will then seek prospective commercial partners to further investigate and launch new offerings in this sector if the findings are positive. Here at the bottom, you can see the relative size of each of these 4 markets. Lexaria is primarily focused on the edible cannabinoids market sector, which is an $8 billion marketplace today, and that's where we are already advanced in terms of commercial partnerships. But please look at the relative size of these other market sectors, where Lexaria believes its Dihydrotech technology will also prove to be commercially applicable with orders of magnitude in growth potential relative to the cannabinoid product sector. So let's talk a little more about the cannabinoid sector first, where Lexaria is currently most active. Why is drug delivery important for cannabinoid edibles? This really comes down to what you see on the right-hand side of this slide. Generally speaking today, most people associate cannabis with smoking marijuana because doing so delivers upwards of 30% of the cannabinoids to the viable bloodstream. By comparison, today's edibles, shown in the bottom right, typically only deliver a suboptimal 3 to 6% of the cannabinoids to the bloodstream. So this is where Lexaria really changes the game. And we always say we don't just ask people to take our word for it that Dihydrotech technology makes a difference. Here you can see details on our scientific validation where we focus on cutting-edge third-party research with our technology. We've completed a number of studies with our tech so far in the cannabinoid space. Studies have included compelling in vitro and human focus studies with CBD and THC. And perhaps most significantly, we believe we are the only company in the space to have a joint 50-50 federal government-funded collaborative research program underway with our respected Canadian National Research Council, or NRC. We are also about to commence a full IRB-approved clinical study at the University of British Columbia here in Canada as well. So now I'd like to pass everyone back to Chris, who can tell us more about where Lexaria is going next.
Thanks, John. So it's very important to note that Lexaria is also perfectly poised to meet emerging regulatory requirements in the cannabis sector. We've thought ahead a lot and designed our business model to align itself with an increasing regulatory burden. So regulators in states like Florida and Pennsylvania have already prohibited selling or smoking cannabis under their medical programs, thereby driving interest toward alternate delivery methods such as our own. Regulators in Nevada, Colorado, California have already or soon will have rules mandating maximum dosage size, 10 milligrams within a package containing not more than 100 milligrams of THC. Similar regulations are expected in Canada late in 2018 or 2019. We've experienced greater demand from THC edibles manufacturers in Nevada and California, for example, because they need improved methods of delivering their APIs at these lower regulated levels. This is exactly what our tech is designed to do, and we offer them a point of differentiation. Our business model, as I mentioned earlier, is focused primarily on generating royalties from corporate partners. We have a number of relationships that are pending or signed. These can progress to a business relationship in as little as 3 months, but it can also take a year or more of formulation work and strategic planning from the partnered company. They have a lot to figure out how they want to position their improved products in the marketplace, and much more. These are long-term royalty arrangements that, once they're properly built, will provide steady revenue with geographic diversification. Our first licensee was a Colorado cannabis chocolates producer with rights to expand into other states. That company is generating royalty revenue for Lexaria today. We have advanced discussions underway with about 10 other U.S. Edibles manufacturers, as well as Canadian and even Mexican firms, each of which has sales today from the startup phase to well over $50 million in annual revenues each. Now, by the way, we know that some of you are asking why this takes so long, and we all want the same thing. For your interest, typical biotech or biopharma companies wait 5 to 7 years after patent issuance before they start generating any meaningful revenues from that IP. We were generating revenues within a single month of our original patent. Almost unheard of, but we will need a little more time to generate the big numbers some of you are waiting for. Now, Lexaria typically targets a 7% royalty on wholesale costs with these manufacturers, plus upfront territory access fees that vary from case to case. And as we expand, we intend to apply our same business model across the other market sectors we've already described. So here's one of them, the nicotine market. It's about 100 times larger than this year's cannabis market. But only this summer did the FDA announce its plans to introduce limits in nicotine, just another API to us, to try to get them down to non-addictive levels. Big Tobacco has already acknowledged the need to change, with companies like PMI and BAT spending billions already toward R&D and development of products for non-combustible means of ingestion. Just as the world learned earlier this week that the first Fortune 500 company investment into the cannabis business came from a consumer beverage company. Lexaria believes the future of nicotine consumption will also be in beverages and edibles. So in light of this, Lexaria is in the final stages of currently designing its first nicotine animal studies that utilize our Dehydratech technology in edible format. We will then work to lever positive data to attract strategic partners and licensees in the tobacco product sector where the need is so obvious, just like we've already done in the cannabis product. Another sector is the NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. Popular drugs like ASA or ibuprofen. Normal use of these products today is associated with significant organ toxicity, including thousands of cases of gastric bleeding, dyspepsia, and kidney disease each year. People are actually dying in their quest for pain relief. This occurs because today's available NSAID products are often dosed at very high levels to overcome significant liver metabolism, which is an area where Lexaria's Dehydratech technology could prove to make a significant impact. Again, Lexaria plans to aggressively commence testing its Dehydratech technology for these applications during 2018 as another potential road to commercial success if positive. All these new sector plans are now in motion due to that new patent. Finally, there are also significant opportunities in the global vitamin and supplements product sector. Just like in the case of NSAIDs, many vitamins like A, D, E, and K face liver metabolism challenges resulting in poor levels of total bioabsorption and bioavailability. Lexaria is planning to test its technology for vitamin applications during 2018, where we want to develop new high absorption type vitamin products, both for today's synthetic versions as well as for new and innovative natural formats. Our activity in the vitamin and supplement sector, just like in NSAIDs and nicotine, opens doors to new strategic relationships with companies in those sectors completely separate from the cannabis industry. Here you can see a short abbreviated slide on some of our senior management, directors and advisors. Our team includes seasoned entrepreneurial people from the pharmaceutical and consumer goods sectors, myself, John Doherty, who has spoken today, and our directors like Ted McKechnie and others. As well, we're very proud to have world-class advisors on our team who assist with our intellectual property development as well as our clinical study undertaking, including Dr. Ed Ergenzinger, who's available on today's call for any questions about patent portfolio, and Dr. Philip Ainsley, who will be leading up our upcoming UBC clinical study. Dr. Ainsley is not on the call. Here's some basic financial information on Lexaria. We trade on both the Canadian and US markets, as I'm sure you know. We have around 68 million shares issued and 79 million on a fully diluted basis. We have no debt, and we do have nearly 3 million Canadian dollars in the bank. Management and insiders own roughly 21% of the company, and I personally remain the largest shareholder, as I think most of you know, with just under 13 million shares. Our shareholders have enjoyed roughly a 400% increase in valuation during 2017 versus the previous year or two. I'll certainly try to deliver at least equal and hopefully much better performance over the next year. And, we do think that our new patent allowance will allow us to experience even faster growth in 2018. I know that there are many long-term shareholders on the call today, as well as people who are new to our story. I invite you to follow us and our stock, especially if you're new, and join us as we move forward into what we really do believe will be our best year yet. So that concludes the formal section of this overview. I'm going to stop here and I'm going to ask for a short moment while we transition to the Q&A session. And I believe Alex has been reviewing your questions and will read out as many as he can for us to address in the time that we have. So I'll pass it over to you, Alex.
Thanks, Chris. A couple of the comments that have come along. Apparently, some people may be having a little bit of trouble with the clarity of the presentation. The deck is available on our website under the investor section with presentations. It was posted there today. Also, some people came in a little bit late. First time doing this, might have some technical glitches. The replay of this, we'll get the link to that posted on our website later today as well, so you can take a look. So on to the question section. The first one, John, I believe this is a good one for you. What near-term catalyst can we expect from your scientific validation work?
Thank you, Alex, and thank you to the individual who posed the question. Yes, this is a great question. So, as we said in the deck, there are several high priority research things that we have underway right now. For instance, we are starting the UBC study, that's University of British Columbia, and we are aiming to start that before Christmas. So that study is something to look for as a near-term catalyst for results from that latest early Q1 of 2018 calendar. We also have the nicotine research that we described today, where advanced preparedness is now complete for starting that nicotine absorption study, and the outcome of that will be key for our ability to identify prospective partners in the nicotine space. Similarly there, look for that output by early Q1 latest. We also have absorption studies and or advanced negotiations underway with U.S. edibles product manufacturers, as we mentioned in the deck. In cases like California, for instance, these folks are motivated to be prepared for the new regs that are coming in January 1. So certainly look for us to be aggressively trying to transition these letters of intent to definitives with parties before the end of Q4 calendar and in states outside of California as early as possible, if not Q1 calendar of 2018. And then finally, we also said in the deck that we are actively doing the project with the National Research Council. That's an 18-month project, so it's a long horizon. But we certainly will look to have interim updates and data representation to our shareholders, hopefully in the early part of calendar 2018. So I hope that addresses your question. That's for relatively near-term research and or partnering objectives driven by research.
Here's one, Chris, that you might want to handle. I've noted Philip Morris is exploring nicotine edibles. You commented Lexaria has begun tests in this sector. How long for first results, and would Philip Morris not be a potential partner? You want to kind of touch on our strategy in this area a little bit.
Sure. We have so many of these, well, not so many. We have several of these running in parallel, and it keeps us pretty occupied. So obviously the nicotine sector, we've been looking at it really all of 2018. We haven't talked much about it because it seemed very preliminary, and quite frankly, with our kind of executive level expectations that a nicotine patent was probably a year or maybe even 2 years away. it did not seem like the highest of priorities, because you can only go so far, especially with these bigger, stronger companies as partners, if you haven't got your kind of intellectual property kind of all lined up. Obviously, that's all changed. So we're moving very, very quickly now, and John has just about completed our internal design of our first nicotine study. It will be done with lab animals, so it's a step up from an in vitro test, which is just tissue. How long will it take? Not very long for our first set of results. One thing that we always caution people, especially when we're dealing with R&D and science, we all know, when we design these studies, we know where we want them to go. We know what the objective is, but it doesn't always work out that way. So while we probably will have internal early results probably before Christmas, we may have to do a second or third iteration before we get publishable results. We just don't know that yet until we get into it. So I think you're looking at something between December and, say, February, which, no matter how you look at it, is pretty quick. Once we have the results from that first nicotine study, we'll then look at what our second round of work will be in that sector. And to the second part of the question about Philip Morris, well, Philip Morris and British American Tobacco and others are, out there publicly saying that they're investing a lot of money into looking for these smoke-free products. I think Philip Morris has said something on their website about having spent $3 or $4 billion already. So we obviously and clearly consider companies like that to be excellent corporate partners for us if we can get them. And we will be initiating those discussions certainly upon the delivery of positive lab results, now that we have that path. So I hope that addresses.
That's great, Chris. Thanks a lot. Next one's for Ed. I've received a number of questions in the last 24 hours about the patent and how a patent in the United States applies through the various patent treaties around the world. If Ed, you could give just a brief explanation of what kind of protections we'll have under our IP, that'd be great. Thanks.
Sure. The patenting process typically, and the way that we pursued it here, we filed initially in the United States, and the initial filings were provisional patent applications. You have 1 year after those are filed to then either file a non-provisional in just the individual countries of interest, or what's called an international patent application under the Patent Cooperation Treaty, which allows you to enter any of the countries around the world that have signed on to that treaty. And in this case, we filed in parallel in order to expedite things in the US. We went ahead and filed directly, and then we also filed internationally. So we have the 2 issued patents in the US, both of which are to methods of enhancing the bioavailability of a lipophilic active agent. One of those is specific to non-psychoactive cannabinoids, but as you heard in the presentation, the other patent is to a variety of lipophilic active agents, including the NSAIDs, the cannabinoids generally, nicotine, and lipophilic vitamins. So we have pending applications also in other countries around the world, to which we will be able to pursue those same types of claims, as well as other claims that we're continuing to pursue off of these applications in the US to lipophilic agent infused food and beverage products, processes for making those products, methods of treating different conditions by administering these products to subjects or to to individuals. So we have those pending applications both in the U.S. and abroad. In some countries, you can speed things up by pointing to an issued patent in the U.S., and that's what we've done in Australia. We got an issued patent in Australia based on the earlier U.S. patent. As soon as we get the second issued patent in hand, we'll pursue the same thing for the broader claims in Australia. But we'll also continue to pursue, both in the U.S. and abroad, other types of claims besides the ones that we have currently. So composition of matter claims, processes for making, and methods for using.
All right, that's great. Thanks a lot, Ed. Chris, probably there's a number of questions in here, and probably direct these to you, all touching on as this new patent award kind of spreads out the scope of what the company's doing. So there, people are trying to get a handle on how much will our expenses increase, how do we plan to finance it, and are we looking at issuing debt to make that happen?
Thanks, Alex, and thanks for all of you who asked that form of question. It's a good question, and it's something that we've been strategizing about internally, actually for a while, for other reasons. So we consider that we're in pretty good shape right now. We announced earlier this year that we were planning on $1 million R&D budget, for example. That R&D budget was the Lexaria side of things. So I'll just make one example. John mentioned in the presentation that we have the University of British Columbia study coming up very shortly. That's a full PK pharmacokinetic data gathering study, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical conditions. It's a big deal, and it's going to cost us a specified amount of money. However, we were able to offset some of those costs in the neighborhood, I believe, of up to $50,000 to $60,000 in grant money that we were able to obtain through various programs that exist to help defray the cost of that R&D. So that's just the first example of how we are trying to stretch our R&D dollars as far as we can. John also mentioned the research that's going on with the NRC. That's a 50-50 program. So we are receiving, in effect, $125,000 worth of, if you wanted to call it, grant money from them to pursue that particular program. So there's a couple of examples. Another one that I can make that comes up all the time, and I think maybe has been overlooked, or maybe we just haven't taken the time to communicate it well to date. You know, we work with a lot of different edibles companies around North America. We've had discussions. We fly to their facilities. John does a lot of work with them. We do a lot of strategizing around recipes and formulation. Whenever we do that, those companies absorb at least half, and in many cases, more than half of the cost involved. So going back to my earlier comment, you know, we're talking about spending $1 million in R&D. That $1 million is probably actually generating a couple $1 million worth of R&D spend, of which we only have to bear that portion as our own cost. So that's a partial answer, and I know it's a long one, but it helps to explain how we're getting a lot of bang for the buck. We have enough money in the bank today to pursue all of our R&D in nicotine, NSAIDs, and cannabinoids for sure, and probably in vitamins for 2018. So we are not concerned about having to raise additional funding for those sectors. And I want to make another point really clear too, because there's an earlier question on near-term deliverables that I think John answered really, really well. But I also want to make a point that, you know, when we talk about R&D, we're not doing it just because it's fun and it's exciting and we're curious to know what the answer is. Our evolution over the last, say, 2 years or 2.5 years has been that when we sit down with the management teams of these other companies, we can't just, have a cup of coffee and ask them to trust us and think that we're nice people and sign a multi-million-dollar contract. They want to see data. And in many cases, they want to see data very specifically generated to their specific formulations or products. That's one of the reasons it takes a while. But it also proves to the point that in order to get those commercial contracts that can be very lucrative for us, we need to provide this kind of data and information. So no, there's no particular plans currently to take on any debt. I think that we would look at debt only if and when we had positive cash flow that we felt comfortable to service it. And as I say, we don't feel that we need any equity or any other kind of financing in the next 12 months. Certainly, if conditions change, if we were to get a huge reputable partner of some kind, we can look at different situations. But otherwise, I think we're pretty well served today. John, do you have anything to add on that, or do you think I hit what I needed
to? No, I think you hit that very, very well, Chris. Maybe the one thing I would just say, so everybody on the call can grasp that. Always think of Lexaria as a company that is an enabling technology. Therefore, our goals of our R&D are to prove what we've proven already with cannabinoids, which is better absorption, faster absorption, more potent products, and or better taste. And that's as far as we go in the process to facilitate a deal with a strategic partner. Any ongoing further development of their products, especially as we move into the pharma caliber as opposed to the consumer product caliber, that will be borne by them and their research teams and their budget. So as a result, that allows us to stretch our research dollar very far and conduct a lot of value-add work to identify and secure partners without a lot of expense that is ultimately required maybe to bring a product to market that is borne by the partner, not us.
That's great, John. Maybe something just to add on to that. There's a couple questions in here regarding FDA approval. Is it required? What are the plans and timeline to acquire? So maybe just kind of elaborate on what you just said there.
Certainly. This is John speaking again. So, excellent question. And bottom line is it depends on the products that we would be enabling for a strategic partner. So if, for instance, our future would involve attracting the interest of a pharma player, a company who is active in the pharmaceutical space. Let's say, for instance, a GW Pharma developing ethical drug products for cannabinoids like their Epidiolex and their Sativex. In that case, yes, absolutely. If they wanted to integrate our tech into a future generation of their product, they, not us, they would have to go through the necessary FDA and other regulatory approval processes for that purpose. But again, where we would get involved would be at the R&D level to demonstrate a better performing absorption technology, and then think of that as a baton pass per se from us to, in this example, GW Pharma, who would then take it forward through the rest of the drug development process, including the FDA process. So that's just one example. And obviously, if we move into other sectors, other product sectors, other pharma sectors, those partners would have to go through regulatory approvals for the products. We are fortunate in the sense that what we do with these partners and what we develop does not require us per se to go through any FDA approval of the tech, but rather to pass on meaningful data for them to then use as part of their data package to approach FDA as needed.
Thanks, John. That was good. Chris, we got a couple questions in here about the Canadian market, from as simple as can I get Turbo CBD in Canada to does the recent decision to amend the Cannabis Act in Canada to allow for legalized edibles within 1 year of legalization benefit the company in your opinion, or does it delay its growth? So maybe touch on what's happening in Canada and how we plan to deal with it.
Absolutely. The Canadian market is an important one to us. As I said earlier, we're talking to companies in Canada, America, and Mexico currently. We actually have had some discussions in entering some markets in Asia as well. So Canada, like everywhere else, it's not a simple thing. I'm not going to go into the minutia of the detail, but there's a lot of conflicting legislation out there in Canada. Obviously, federally legal for medical purposes today, going to be recreationally legal next year. And as you commented, the Cannabis Act was recently amended to allow for the first time, for the creation and sale of edible products. Nobody knows exactly what they're going to look like and when that will be. I can only give you what we're hearing and what our best guesses are, which is to say, you remember back, I spent some time on that slide talking about Pennsylvania, Florida, and the other regulatory movement in different states in the United States. I think Canada is going to be very similar. I think you're going to see potency limitations. Maybe it's 10 milligrams per dose and 100 milligrams per package, which might become some sort of emerging standard in the United States. I think you're going to see a lot of restrictions on labeling. I think you'll see a ton of restrictions on claims. I think claims will be basically outlawed in Canada. But a couple of things that I've also seen, I did read a report. I've never been able to verify the facts, but I read a report that said that for the month of August in Canada, for the first time in Canadian, legal purchase and sales of marijuana products, for the first time, more marijuana was sold as an oil legally in Canada than was sold as a flower to be smoked. That type of data point we think is really, really important because it just kind of synchronizes into harmony with what we've seen in the more mature U.S. markets like California. Edibles have been legal in California since the late 1990s. So that market is clearly way far advanced to the Canadian. And as the regulations are starting to loosen up in Canada and allow for forms other than smoking, the consumer population is stating very clearly what it is that they want. And what they want is non-smokable varieties of cannabis in the main. Again, this is something that Lexaria has bet our future on, and we started making those bets 2 years ago with these patents. So it'll probably be late in 2018, maybe even a year to 18 months from now before the edibles market, I think, really gets a lot of traction in Canada. What we found in the United States, because we've had so much experience in the American markets, is that companies, so whether you're I don't know, whether you're one of the big edibles companies in California or one of the big LPs in Canada, making your decisions on the edibles market usually involve your board of directors, believe it or not, and certainly your strategic planning committee, because you have to start addressing questions like this, like I'm about to pose, 6 months before you're ready to start selling it. And that is, do you want to have a healthy line of edibles, i.e., no chemicals, no preservatives, and no added sugar? Well, if you do, you're going to need technology like Lexaria. A lot of companies load up the sugar in their edibles to try to overcome the, pretty strong flavors in those edibles. A lot of other companies are using distillate, so very highly refined, clear oils, where the bulk of or all of the terpenes and the synergistic effects of the broad range of APIs in the cannabis plant have been removed. so that all that remains perhaps is THC and maybe 2 or 3 other cannabinoids. When they do that, the flavor problem goes away. But really, we all have to ask, is that still a medical product, or is it really just a recreational product? So this is why I say these companies have to do a lot of strategic thinking, and then they have to think about things, especially in Canada, because it's so big geographically. If they're going to do healthy forms of baked edibles, are they going to need a bakery that's licensed in every province or in 4 provinces across the country to service that national market? That's a lot of regulatory work. They're going to have to work on labels, have to work on formulations. It makes me laugh if you think about it. You guys, you can all go online and look it up. Remember the old Heinz 57 story, right? Heinz 57 ketchup took 57 recipes before they got it right. There's a lot of experimentation that's required. So I think the Canadian market is coming online, and I think it's going to be great news for Lexaria in 2018, because I think these companies are realize that they're going to need roughly 6 months to kind of get their act together before they start selling. So it has been a non-event for us in 2017 because obviously we do not affect smokable varieties, but I think it's going to be a big impact in 2018.
That's great, Chris. Thanks. Another common theme in the question